Well, you know, to be fair to the people of Nazareth, it's not entirely shocking, I guess. And maybe the word astonished is too strong a word. Let me explain. In ancient times, Jesus is a carpenter, the son of Joseph. He follows in his father's footsteps, which was natural. But in those days, carpenters, while they were highly valued for their skill, because working with wood was really a high level, a high skill level, because not a lot of things were made of wood, most things were made of stone. And so carpenters had to travel around a lot to earn their living, to go wherever people who had money could hire them to do their work. And so Joseph probably would have been someone who traveled around a bit. And consequently, the families were left really on their own a lot. And much like today, when we have individuals who will work shift work, or people who are involved in transportation and things like that. So families, but in ancient times, those families were not looked down upon, but they weren't necessarily at the same level that others were. Oh, look at you, the head of your household has to leave, right? And Jesus also was a carpenter, so he's in that kind of mold. So the people of Nazareth see this guy come back to town, and they're pretty skeptical of the whole thing. Like, who is this guy? This is Jesus. We grew up with him and his family, right? So it's a really big decision for them to follow Jesus. But the problem is, I guess, the challenge they face, which they didn't meet or rise to the occasion, is, you see, it's the message that Jesus brings that they missed. It goes over their heads. He brings them a message of peace, a message of love. Help the poor. Don't judge people. It's not a message of condemnation, you're bad, you're no good, you're rotten. It's not that at all. It's really a message of love. It's the new message. And they're not able to hear the words because they're looking at the person. And they're thinking of the person as the carpenter. They're thinking of carpenters in their social milieu, which, well respected and valued in terms of the actual, as I said, the family setting, not valued as highly. So they don't hear the words. Jesus might as well have been speaking to them in English, because they weren't ready for the message. And it's a tough situation for him. He goes there knowing full well he'll face rejection. But nevertheless, it's something that has to be done. I remember walking when I went to Nazareth, going to the church or the area where Mary supposedly grew up, and then walking down the road back to the bus and thinking about that. This is the city that Jesus kind of, for the most part, grows up in, but it's also where he gets rejected. It's an interesting phenomenon in that respect. You sure feel the spirituality there when you walk through Nazareth. But it also led me to think that the gospel today about the whole issue of rejection. And when you decide to follow Christ's message, there is rejection, right? Because you're being asked to do something entirely different. You're being asked, much like the first reading says, to break out of the mold, break out of your comfort level, do something that's very different. And in Jesus' world, working with the poor, helping the sick, helping the suffering, breaking out of the status quo, viewing or thinking in terms of inclusiveness and equality, rebellious thoughts. not acceptable. And if you think even further, many of us, in making our choice to come to this church, faced rejection, didn't we? There were people around us who may have been friends and acquaintances, no longer were those friends and acquaintances. But it says, the Gospels tell us that. That's the price to pay if you're going to follow the message. And your weakness becomes your strength in that regard. And that's true. When we choose to follow Jesus' message, at first you think, oh man, did I make the right choice? There's doubt. We talked about doubt one Sunday and how good it is for the soul, for the spirit. There's second guessing, and that's good too. But then the strength. Look at the strength we feel when we get together. Our opening hymn today. Wow. Talk about uplifting. Our seats, our empty seats were filled with the Holy Spirit. Because we made the decision that the people of Nazareth didn't. We have said, I'm going to follow you. Justice, peace, love, equality, inclusiveness, those are all things I believe in. And in doing that, I am going to march forward in the name of Christ. Bring that to the community. Bring that to my friends. Lead by example, the example of Jesus in goodness. It's not an example where you have to be perfect and do not sin. Lead by example, never sin, and people, no, it's not that at all. Those are things you can't possibly do. But you can follow the message of Christ. And so, I guess if Jesus were to come into our midst today, he would be astonished maybe, but in a good way. Astonished to find so many devoted followers in a community. He'd be pretty happy. He'd be laughing just like a little man, thinking, wow, this is pretty good, because these people get it. And there are many like us out there. But it's good to know that in making the choice to follow Jesus, it's a tough choice. It's a really tough choice. But at the same time, the rewards, and I'm not talking about going to heaven and anything like that, the rewards that you feel within your heart, within your soul and spirit, those rewards you can't buy anywhere. You can't get a prescription from a doctor for that. Those are the rewards that come with being a follower